Well, it's been almost a year since Arjuna, the psychic dog, had channeled anything at all. And he says now he's got a very important announcement to make, which, and he tends to exaggerate sometimes, but he says the fate of the earth depends on it. And it's something to do with the news, with the he says it's like Da Vinci Code, but it's a genetic code. There's some discoveries about the fact that we have a brother, a genetic brother, somebody who's very related to us, who is now under dire threat of extinction, and which is being murdered, crucified, dismembered, and whatnot, and we need to do something about that, because if we don't do something about that, we will lose something very precious about the quality of mankind. And what apparently it is the fact that for a long time now we thought that we were related to common chimpanzee and not to the other kind of chimpanzee, which is called bonobo or pygmy chimpanzee. Apparently we're more closely related to it, not only genetically, something like 98.4%, which is closer than the two species of sparrows, but morphologically, in other words, meaning like the body's structure, the behavior, it's much more like bonobo. It was a well-hidden secret. And who did that? Oh, and he said that it was sort of like a conspiracy, and I don't like usually buying into conspiracy theories, and he says that the number man that have created this separation between our true nature and our nearest relative, the bonobo chimpanzee, instead identified us with the common chimpanzee that people like John Malloy Goodall had studied, and represented us as being territorial, aggressive, predatory, carnivorous, weapon-making kind of species, instead of gentle, sharing, loving, being able to relate to your neighbors in a much more gentle way. And that's a very radical difference, he says. And now the very fact that this brother of ours, a twin brother of ours, is on the verge of destruction by the numbers man, the men who trying to digitize the world, to make it correspond to their wishes, to make it totally be driven by market forces, by the iron hand of the market, the men who have now robbed majority of humanity during the last so-called financial crisis. They are also, it's in their interest to, in fact, suppress this knowledge and this information and to destroy the last vestiges of bonobo from the surface of the earth, because it's very worrying, isn't it? Because that would mean that they've won and that mankind has become totally separated from its own true nature and he said, oh, people are very easy to brainwash, he says. Once you give them a vision of who they are, they will follow that and they will actually make it happen. It'll be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we need to act, he says, very, very quickly in order to undo this damage and to save bonobo and to learn to know more about it, to learn about our continuity with our animal brethren, including bonobo. So, but what are the number men? Give us an example. He says people like, what? John Nash, the hero of was a popular film called The Beautiful Mind, and he turned out to be actually paranoid schizophrenic. He was a game theorist, he got a Nobel Prize for his discoveries, and he turned out to be a really kind of quite mad, paranoid person. But his theories were bought by Cold War people, by the market people, and they have become incredibly influential in shaping the whole world. And so if the numbers man will continue to affect the world, the fate of the world in this way, Arjuna says, and the feeling man and women don't resist or are too disorganized to resist, then mankind will become digitized and will lose its soul. Now, I want to know, people like John Nash, yes, they're extreme, but how do you tell apart, the sort of the numbers men from the feeling men and women? And he says, it's a apparently very simple test, he says, which you can do in about 30 seconds. And what you've got to do is to ask the people, anybody, to look up at the top of the head, just like that, and hold their eyes up while they're closing their eyelids. And if their pupils come down and there's no white at all, they can't hold their eyes up while closing the eyelid, they're the numbers men. And if their eyelids are all the way up, and still a lot of white visible. The more white, the more feeling they are. Then they're the feeling man. Now, of course, Arjuna is not saying that one of them is evil, the other one is good. It's not like Jacob and Esau, although there are some similarities there too, and it's a complicated story. And that there are some really good numbers men, like who? Like Dan Ellsberg, who had his enlightenment on the road to Damascus, so to speak, and kind of blew up the whole thing, the whole secrecy of the numbers men. Or, like recently, the other one, the Julian Assange, who's being character assassinated now, is another one. So there are good numbers men, and there are totally disorganized feeling men. And what he says we've got to do now is to get more organized, to understand the iconic battle for the soul of humanity, manifested by the bonobo chimpanzee under threat by the numbers men, and do something about it. What? He says that, he says, look, there's internet, you go onto the internet, you type in something like bonobo.org or friendsofbonobo.org, and you'll get all the information, you'll get the references on how you can help, how you can get involved in this iconic struggle, because if we don't win against the number man, we'll all become just robots, and the earth will, in effect, be destroyed. He says it's already well on the way to being destroyed, but they'll finish their job. They'll survive, of course, but they'll be like Terminator Man or robots or whatever, and they'll make the rest of us just servants. So please go to those, Arjuna says, go to those sites, check it all out for yourself, and get involved. Let's make a difference to the fate of Bonobo and the fate of the world.